Why alien medical textbooks devote entire chapters to humans. Dr. Evelyn Cross sighed, wiping her forehead with the back of her gloved hand. The ER was chaos incarnate, a chorus of beeping monitors, shouted commands, and the constant rush of stretchers. A triple-car pileup had turned her night shift into a battlefield, and the human body's uncanny ability to break in every conceivable way was on full display. "Dr. Cross, we've got another incoming," a nurse called, her voice barely audible over the cacophony. Evelyn didn't answer, already racing toward the gurney being wheeled through the doors. The patient was conscious but pale, clutching a bloody towel to his abdomen. Evelyn's hands moved automatically, assessing, calculating, acting. Just another night in Chicago. Then the room froze. A deafening hum filled the air, drowning out the chaos. Equipment flickered, alarms silenced, and a blinding light enveloped the room. When Evelyn's vision cleared, the ER was gone. She stood in what could only be described as a spacecraft. Smooth, silver walls shimmered faintly, and a panoramic window revealed the swirling expanse of space. Beside her stood towering figures with elongated limbs and translucent, bioluminescent skin. Their eyes, large and shimmering like liquid silver, regarded her with an unsettling intensity. "Human healer Evelyn Cross," one of them intoned, their voice resonating in her mind more than her ears. "You have been chosen." "Chosen?" Evelyn echoed, her voice hoarse with disbelief. "Chosen for what?" "To save us," the alien replied simply. The absurdity of the situation hit her like a tidal wave, but before she could argue, a holographic projection sprang to life before her. Images of alien bodies, broken, bleeding, and twisted in ways Evelyn had never imagined, flashed across the display. A war, brutal and unrelenting, raged in the background. "We are the Raltherians," the alien continued. "Our warriors fall faster than we can heal them. Our methods fail. Your species has been observed, studied. Your resilience, your adaptability, it is unparalleled. We require your expertise." Evelyn gaped at them. "You've got the wrong person. I'm just a trauma surgeon. I don't know anything about alien biology." "Precisely why you were chosen," another alien chimed in. "Your kind excels under uncertainty. Improvisation is your strength. The Raltherian war effort hinges on your success." Before she could protest further, a sleek metallic table materialized before her. On it lay an alien warrior, their glowing veins pulsing faintly, their breaths shallow. The scene screamed of familiarity, and yet was entirely foreign. "This warrior will die without intervention," the first alien said. "Demonstrate your methods." Evelyn hesitated, staring at the bizarre anatomy. Then her instincts kicked in. A body was a body, wasn't it? Circulation, oxygenation, stabilization, the principles had to be the same. "Fine," she snapped, rolling up her sleeves. "But if I screw this up, you'd better not vaporize me." As Evelyn worked, the alien medics observed with rapt attention, their luminous eyes flickering with something she couldn't quite place. Curiosity? Hope? For the first time in her career, Evelyn felt like she wasn't just fighting for one life but for an entire species. The Raltherian warrior on the table stabilized, his glowing veins pulsing with renewed vigor. Evelyn slumped against a nearby console, her breath coming in sharp bursts. The alien medics exchanged glances, their translucent faces shimmering with what Evelyn could only interpret as awe. "That worked," one of them said, their mental voice tinged with astonishment. "Of course it worked," Evelyn snapped, more out of exhaustion than arrogance. "Basic triage. You're lucky he didn't have a ruptured, whatever that glowing organ is. Secondary vascular node," the medic supplied helpfully. Evelyn blinked. "Sure. Let's go with that." Before she could ask for water, or a stiff drink, a deafening alarm blared throughout the ship. The medics stiffened, their bioluminescence dimming. "What now?" Evelyn demanded. "Enemy incursion," one alien said, hurriedly gesturing for her to follow. "The Varksith. They have breached our defensive perimeter." "Fantastic," Evelyn muttered, jogging to keep up with their impossibly long strides. The medics led her to what appeared to be a command center. Holograms flickered in the air, displaying scenes of carnage. Rauthurian ships engaged sleek, angular vessels that moved with unnerving precision. Explosions dotted the void, and debris spun wildly. "Casualty count rising exponentially," a voice announced, emotionless yet urgent. The lead medic turned to Evelyn. "Your expertise is required in the triage bay." Evelyn opened her mouth to protest but stopped herself. The thought of diving headfirst into alien warfare was horrifying, but lives, alien lives, hung in the balance. "All right," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Let's go." The triage bay was chaos incarnate. Dozens of Rauthurians lay on metallic slabs, their glowing veins flickering erratically. Evelyn's human instincts kicked in as she assessed the scene. "Okay, listen up," she barked, pointing at the nearest medic. "I need you to translate for me. Tell them to sort the injured into 3 groups: critical, stable, and gone." The medic hesitated but obeyed, their voice booming with authority. Evelyn turned to another alien, shoving a medical instrument into their hands. "You're now my nurse. Get me those, secondary vascular node clamps. Now!" The medic scrambled to comply. Evelyn moved from patient to patient, improvising wildly. She used alien tools to cauterize wounds, restart glowing hearts, and even patch up a bizarre, gelatinous organ that threatened to spill onto the floor. Her hands moved with the precision of a surgeon but the creativity of a mad scientist. "How are you doing this?" one of the medics asked, their voice tinged with disbelief. "Years of practice and a lot of caffeine," Evelyn quipped, elbow deep in alien viscera. The room seemed to blur as hours passed. Evelyn lost count of how many lives she'd saved, or lost. Each success brought a surge of relief, but the failures weighed heavily on her. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing her to the ground. Evelyn scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding. "What was that?" she shouted. "The Varksith have breached the hull," a medic replied. Evelyn swore under her breath. "And what's the plan for that?" The medic hesitated. "We are healers. Combat is not our expertise." "Well, lucky for you, survival is mine," Evelyn said, grabbing a strange metallic device that looked suspiciously like a weapon. As the triage bay devolved into panic, Evelyn's mind raced. She wasn't a soldier, but she'd seen enough action movies to know that sitting still wasn't an option. "Someone show me how this thing works," she demanded, holding up the alien weapon. A medic quickly demonstrated, their hands trembling. Evelyn absorbed the instructions, her face grim. "All right," she said, gripping the weapon tightly. "Let's give these Varksith a reason to rewrite their textbooks." With that, Evelyn stepped into the hallway, her pulse hammering like a war drum. The hallway was eerily silent, save for the faint hum of the ship's failing systems. Evelyn gripped the alien weapon tightly, its strange, organic surface pulsing in her hands like a living creature. She had no training with alien weaponry, or weapons in general, but the glowing barrel and sharp edges radiated a primal sense of power. Behind her, a small group of Rauthurian medics followed hesitantly, their slender forms glowing faintly in the dim light. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder. "You don't have to come," she said. "This is probably going to get ugly. We will not leave our patients undefended," one of them replied, their voice resolute despite the fear in their luminous eyes. Evelyn nodded. "Stick close and let me handle the shooting." They pressed on, the sound of distant skirmishes growing louder. The corridor widened into a massive atrium, its walls lined with glowing panels displaying alien constellations. In the center stood the Varksith invaders, their sleek, insectoid forms moving with deadly precision. Evelyn's heart clenched. The Varksith were terrifying, tall, multi-limbed creatures with chitinous armor, and weapons that seemed to grow organically from their bodies. They moved in unison, a single, lethal organism. The lead Varksith turned its angular head toward the group. Its multifaceted eyes glinted ominously. "Humans," it hissed, its voice a guttural rasp. "Always meddling where they do not belong." Evelyn raised her weapon, her palms sweating. Sorry to disappoint, but I'm not much for staying in my lane. The Varxith charged. Evelyn fired instinctively. The weapon in her hands emitted a sharp, high-pitched whine before releasing a burst of energy that tore through the lead Varxith. It shrieked, its chitin cracking and glowing with internal energy before collapsing. Keep behind me! Evelyn shouted, stepping forward to meet the onslaught. The Varxith swarmed, their movements unnervingly fast. Evelyn moved on instinct, firing bursts of alien energy that left trails of light in the air. Her shots were far from perfect, but the weapon's devastating power compensated for her lack of precision. Behind her, the medics worked frantically to shield the injured patients in the triage bay. They erected shimmering energy barriers and hauled makeshift barricades into place. Evelyn's pulse pounded as the Varxith closed in. One of them leapt toward her, its blade-like appendage aimed at her throat. She ducked and fired at point-blank range, the blast sending the creature flying. "You're doing great, Dr. Cross!" one of the medics called out, their voice tinged with awe. "Don't jinx it!" Evelyn yelled back, rolling to avoid another attack. The tide of the battle began to shift. Evelyn's relentless assault and the medics' quick thinking created a defensive front the Varxith hadn't anticipated. But just as she thought they might have a chance, the ship lurched violently again. "What now?" Evelyn shouted, struggling to keep her balance. "Power core destabilizing," a medic replied, their voice panicked. "If we don't stabilize it, the ship will be destroyed." Evelyn swore under her breath. "Of course it is." She fired another shot, taking down 2 Varxith in one burst. "Okay, new plan. You guys hold the line. I'll handle the core," one of the medics protested. "But you're not an engineer." Evelyn gave a grim smile. "No, but I'm great at figuring things out on the fly." She sprinted toward the ship's engineering deck, her path littered with debris and fallen Varxith. Her heart thundered as she burst into the core chamber. The power core was a massive, glowing sphere of shifting light and energy. It pulsated erratically, casting the room in blinding flashes. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the air crackled with static. Evelyn approached cautiously, her mind racing. The core's controls were a chaotic mess of alien symbols and interfaces. She pressed a random button, and the entire room shook violently. "Okay, not that one," she muttered, sweat streaming down her face. As she worked, the door behind her burst open. A Varxith commander stalked in, its massive form towering over her. "You cannot stop this," it hissed, raising a weapon that crackled with dark energy. Evelyn spun, aiming her alien weapon. "Watch me," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. The room filled with light as the two clashed, each fighting not just for survival but for the fate of everyone aboard. Evelyn ducked as the Varxith commander's weapon released a surge of energy, the blast scorching the wall behind her. The power core pulsed violently, its unstable energy shaking the ship with rhythmic tremors. Every second counted, and she knew it. But first, she had to deal with the hulking nightmare standing between her and the controls. The commander lunged, its blade-like appendages slicing through the air with lethal precision. Evelyn rolled to the side, barely avoiding the strike, and fired her alien weapon. The bolt struck the Varxith's armor, staggering it but not bringing it down. "You're a stubborn one," she muttered, firing again. This time, the blast hit the exposed joints of its armor, eliciting a guttural roar of pain. The Varxith retaliated with a sweeping strike, knocking the weapon from Evelyn's hands. It skittered across the floor, coming to rest dangerously close to the core. Unarmed, Evelyn scrambled backward, her mind racing for a solution. Her eyes darted to the flickering control panels and the core's fluctuating energy field. A wild idea formed in her head, a risky, desperate move that could either save everyone or doom them all. "I'm really going to regret this," she muttered. As the Varxith charged, Evelyn sprang toward the core. She dodged another strike, using the alien's momentum to propel herself closer to the weapon. Her fingers wrapped around its organic surface just as the Varxith lunged again, pinning her against the core. The heat was unbearable, the energy radiating through her body like fire. Evelyn gritted her teeth, raising the weapon and aiming it directly at the Varxitha's chest. "Let's see if this works," she said, pulling the trigger. The resulting blast was deafening, a concentrated burst of energy that not only annihilated the Varxith commander but also disrupted the core's unstable field. Evelyn was thrown backward, landing hard on the floor as alarms blared around her. She groaned, forcing herself to her feet. The core still pulsed erratically, but the blast had temporarily stabilized its output. She limped to the control panel, her hands shaking as she worked. The alien symbols blurred together, but her instincts guided her. Come on, she muttered, pressing a series of buttons that seemed right. The ship shuddered violently, then began to stabilize. The core's light shifted from chaotic flashes to a steady, rhythmic glow. Evelyn exhaled a shaky breath, her knees nearly buckling in relief. "Dr. Cross, are you alive?" a voice crackled through her communicator. It was one of the Rautherian medics. "Barely," she replied, coughing. "Core's stabilized." "How's the triage bay?" "We've held them off," the medic said. "But the Varxith are retreating. Looks like they're cutting their losses." Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. "Good. Prepare for evac. I'll meet you there." She staggered back through the corridors, her body screaming in protest with every step. The medics were already loading the injured onto escape pods, their glowing forms moving with frantic precision. "Dr. Cross!" one of them called. "We saved a pod for you." "Appreciate it," she said, collapsing into the seat. The hatch sealed shut, and the pod launched into the void, leaving the damaged ship behind. As the pod drifted towards safety, Evelyn looked around at the injured but alive beings surrounding her. The medics, the patients, and even the few uninjured had all survived because of their combined efforts. One of the medics turned to her. "Dr. Cross, you've done something incredible today. Your actions will be remembered across the galaxies." Evelyn let out a tired laugh. "Great. Maybe next time they'll send someone qualified." The pod's navigational system chimed, signaling their approach to the Rautherian capital ship. Evelyn leaned back, exhaustion finally catching up to her. She closed her eyes, her mind replaying the events of the last few hours. A wry smile crossed her face. She'd been out of her depth from the start, but somehow she'd made it through. If the aliens didn't already have chapters devoted to humans in their medical textbooks, they would now.